spend a lot of time being trained as teachers on how students learn, how to create these experiences for our students. And so we end up trying to improve our classroom management, build our relationships, become better teachers, attend all the professional development, but we don't have those practiced opportunities in our credential program to design, create experience for our students in these lessons, to build. Welcome to the next stop on our Ready, Set, Prep roadmap, Lesson Lookout. Creating lessons is one of my absolute favorite things. There's something about the opportunity to create that is really fulfilling for me when I design something with my students in mind, find ways for them to connect their learning to something that we've maybe already experienced or discussed, or something that's going on right now in real life. And even designing thematic lessons. Those probably are at the top of my favorite thing to do. But that wasn't always the case. Creating lessons felt like an assignment, because that was something that I had learned to do in my credential program. You design a hook, then the next thing you create kind of the objectives, what the teacher's going to say, and then you have your closing, and then maybe there's a few opportunities for differentiation. And that was how I created my lessons early on, very scripted and very much having me do all of the talking. I was the one that shared everything out, and if I wanted my students to participate, I'd have them quietly raise a hand and share the answer. Those were the opportunities that I gave my students. What I found was I was really tired at the end of the day talking. My voice was strained a lot of the times, especially those first weeks of school. But during the day, I was doing all the talking. I was facilitating everything, and it's actually how I was kind of trained during my student teaching. When my master teacher was presenting, she did all the talking, and students were expected to be quiet. And that's what I thought good classroom management was. And when I designed that spilled over when I designed my lessons, I expected students to be quiet, and that I gave them enough information to repeat it back to me or give me the correct answer. And one day I was kind of reflecting and thinking about this, being so tired, and was curious, what are my students actually doing? Because when I thought back to their faces, sure, they were quiet, maybe they were sitting, but a lot of times they were fidgeting, or their bodies were drooping. They're leaning down like this. They're eyes are glazing over. And they weren't as excited as I was to share the information with them. They kind of weren't giving that energy back. And I really tried to reflect on, where can I improve my instruction? I'm a new teacher, so I know I don't know everything. Where can I grow? What can I do to change it? And when I started to think about how I like to learn, I really like to participate. I want to be a part of the lessons or the professional development that I'm in. I want to be able to experience learning. And that was the key that I needed to tweak and transform my instruction for my students. I began to look at my lessons. I still was scripting them out because that was easier for me. That was routine. But then I'd look back at them and say, where can my students experience learning? Where is there an opportunity for me to maybe give them a moment to discuss with a neighbor or reflect on the learning that is going on? When I gave these opportunities to my students, I was less stressed. I was not as tired, and it was really rewarding because I got to see the students engaging. I got to hear their discussions. And so that was something that I really looked forward to. I began to recognize too, as I was doing this, how important curiosity is. I'm one that loves to still imagine things, what my classroom would look like, what this lesson could be. I'm constantly dreaming up of things. And when I began to think about, well, when you're curious, that creates interest. When you're curious about something, you want to know more. And instead of that hook that it was like, oh, I was trained, add a question, that was kind of the hook where I got used to just doing the same thing, and it was boring. It became very boring. So when I started to, maybe I could like show a mystery. I could give them just a problem, not teach them anything, see if they could work it out with what they knew. Give them a little bit of struggle. Sometimes that pairs well with curiosity. But there's a balance there too. I think, when you're sparking curiosity, you don't want to overwhelm and create problems. You want to just give a little bit of, oh, tell me more, like, oh, why is that? And when I began to invite curiosity into my classroom, I recognized when you're curious about something, you are interested in it. You want to know more. And by creating experiences that spark that curiosity, it's doing the work for me. I'm not trying to pull the kids' attention. It already is inviting for the students. They want to know more. So I started adding a little bit of curiosity. When I got more comfortable, I would provide opportunities for students to talk to each other and partner share. I did have to train them with how to go and find a partner, because sometimes that can waste a lot of time. So doing that efficiently did help, but that wasn't the first thing that I worked on. So as I got comfortable, I added in more student talk. Turn and talk was an easier one because kids are right there and you don't have to organize it. But having them discuss things. It also, when you're if you ask a question, people want the right answers sometimes as a teacher. And so those questions that I asked, I try to make them more open-ended. A lot of times students need time to think about it. And I recognize as a student, like, is this the right answer? Is this what the teacher's asking? And so when you give students an opportunity to talk, they can kind of see, oh, is the person thinking the same thing I am? Are we on the same page with what the teacher was asking? And then it builds a little bit more confidence if you want to share out answers after. And then another important key that I recognized just as a learner was how important connection is for students to remember things. If we want students to take the information and yes, use it, make meaning of it, it has to connect. It has to be something that's important to them or something that they find valuable, curious, interesting. And how they do that, we don't have to do the work for everyone because we have several students in our class and we can't give everybody, this is how you connect it here and this for every individual students. But we can provide them opportunities to reflect and to pause and think about, how does this relate to what's going on in my life? What thing have I learned before that it connects to or is similar to? I've recognized when I'm talking to students, a lot of the connections that they share may not make sense to me, but it is meaningful for them, and so it sticks. And that's what we want. We want learning to stick for our students. And then lastly is that retrieval practice, so that we don't put in all this effort for planning our lessons. And the next day when we're building on our lessons, we have to step back and review because students don't remember. So building that connection helps kind of with that creating memory with learning, but also the retrieval practice at the end of our lesson. If we just give students 1 minute summary, write down something. Write down 3 things that you learned, something you're curious about. What do you wonder? What are you still thinking about? When we give students those questions to reflect on, that's pausing, and maybe they don't have an opportunity to apply their learning, but it's making it stick. It's again reinforcing that connection and making meaning of the lesson that they're learning. I think this is where we get teaching wrong. When we're taught to become teachers, there's such a high emphasis on standards. Standards-based grading, there's our assessments at the end of the year based on standards. That's how a lot of schools are kind of reviewed, is how well our students meet the standards. And we put so much emphasis on that. Our learning targets, our objectives have to be on standards. And yes, that is important. There has to be something that we are, building upon each year, but we're taught to meet that, and we're not taught how to get to that standard. And I think that's what's been so frustrating in education, is that we don't spend a lot of time being trained as teachers on how students learn, how to create these experiences for our students. And so we end up trying to improve our classroom management, build our relationships, become better teachers, attend all the professional development, but we don't have those practiced opportunities in our credential program to design, create experience for our students in these lessons, to build curiosity for our students and where connection comes in. And I think that that's where a lot of our frustration comes throughout the year, is we're burnt out writing the same kind of lessons and feeling like we have to design thematic classrooms all the time. You don't. You just have to find small opportunities. And what I shared, curiosity, student talk, discussion, reflection, those things really don't need to cost any money. It is fun sometimes, to build those thematic lessons, but it shouldn't prevent you from just incorporating a few small things, because you can really change your voice, you can change the mood in the room, and it can add a different element to your lessons. But just adding that curiosity and providing moments of connection, spaces for reflection, and opportunities for students to discuss and talk with each other. This is what creates those experiences for our students, and this is what makes learning stick. It creates those memories for students when they look back and realize, oh, I remember learning about that in 3rd grade, or I remember my 5th grade teacher was so excited to teach us this, and we got to do this really fun experiment. And when students create and make connections and make meaning of their learning, then they own it. And that's theirs. It's theirs now. It's no longer something that we hold on to. They've now created a memory of learning where we just exposed them, gave them opportunities to digest it, look at it in a different way, and experience it. And so as we close out this segment of our Ready, Set, Prep roadmap, I just encourage you this year to try something, to look over your lessons and add in a few of those elements, just like I did when I started to recognize that my lessons weren't really delivering, weren't landing, and students weren't remembering what I was teaching. So find a way to add a little bit of curiosity, maybe 1 week, and maybe in a few weeks, look for ways to add a little more student discussion and provide reflection maybe a few weeks later. I hope that you'll continue on this route as we get ready, set, and prepped for the new school year. Feel free. It's a great opportunity to reflect and use your Ready, Set, Prep workbook if you have that. You can start to work through some of those pages that are outlined for our lesson lookout. Our next stop will be over at Classroom Camp, where we'll talk a little bit about how our classroom can do some of the teaching for us.